Awesome. Okay. Oh, so today we're talking about gratitude and confidence, which are two characteristics that are not usually put together, virtues that are not paired together often. And I want to make the connection not only because they support each other, but because together they support you much, much more, especially during the holidays. But in general, they support you with eating well. Let's see if I can somehow avoid that light. Okay. Um, so thanks for everyone for being here. This is module 5, our training and our coaching call. Just to remind you, I don't want anyone to miss it if they can join us live tomorrow at same time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, but it's Tuesday, not Wednesday this week for the holidays. And I know you can hear me, but if you could actually comment, if anyone's familiar, you can get an idea of how this sounds compared to
Hey,
our usual calls.
it's good.
That would be great. Is it better or is it like the same? Okay. We'll see. And give me feedback at the end. Thanks, Tom. And Sue. Okay. So the importance of the gratitude and the confidence, it kind of comes together around self-esteem being the linking piece. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, well, a lot about our self-esteem and the gratitude and the confidence and tying in the decadence we talked about from last week. So if you can think of the preferred decadence, some of the things that we talked about it in the training, but much further on our coaching call last week. So hopefully you got a chance to watch that. But just think back to that because I'm going to ask you a little bit about it today and how we can apply that to everything we're learning today. Oh, you know what? I made some, an outline for the training today, and I was thinking of it like a coaching call where I really wanted to engage you. So some of the things I can just mention and we'll go deeper tomorrow. Okay. So the definition of gratitude is just being thankful for whatever the item is, right? Very, very simple. But when we are thankful for something, it opens up our heart. It literally energizes our heart, brings blood flow to your heart. So it actually strengthens the heart in that way. It is, some foods they say are good for the heart. The major reason they're good for the heart is because they bring blood flow to the heart and they increase blood flow overall, make the blood flow easier throughout the body. Well, gratitude does the same thing. And on top of that, it actually lengthens your telomeres. It helps to repair your telomeres, which, if you're not familiar with the telomeres, they're the little ends on the DNA that prevent the DNA from becoming damaged, or in one way, they prevent the DNA from becoming damaged. And so when we are grateful, we are actually telling our body that we want to be alive and that this is a good environment. So it supports the body in maintaining its health and function and also it says that you are a positive influence in the environment. And so it supports you in being a contributor, kind of wants to, universe, you could say the ecosystem, all of it wants to keep you around. So it helps to strengthen those telomeres, to lengthen the telomeres. So I want to just have you reflect. We don't have to do any sharing today, but reflecting on gratitude for wherever you are in your life, with the holidays, with your family this season. This season for a lot of people, especially in the US, is a time for loved ones and connection and gratitude in general, right? Thanksgiving. But as often happens with the holidays in mainstream modern fast-paced culture, we forget the actual meanings of the holidays and the the kind of core reasons we come together. So just think, to get us started, I want to just bring you to all of the things you have to be grateful for around the holidays, or around, if you're not celebrating the holidays, around this time of year, around the connection that you might experience. And sometimes it might be, there's definitely, uh, people that have passed on that would be amazing to still enjoy this time with in person, face to face, and yet you can still have that connection and gratitude for that relationship. However it looks now for you, that perspective may be different for each of us, but any way that you can feel that connection and the gratitude is going to be really powerful. So I just want you to feel into that, all of the blessings you have. It's, generally speaking, countless, the blessings that each one of us have, countless blessings. The fact that we just wake up with breath in our lungs, the ability to see, the ability to get out of bed, all of those are blessings, right? So this gratitude is one of the, for me, I feel like it's one of the strongest virtues we can identify with and embody for our self-esteem for multiple reasons. But so we hear the words, like self-esteem, self-love, self-care, confidence, a lot of these words that are tossed around. And so I just want to clarify that self-esteem is the confidence in one's worth or abilities, and it is something we're all dealing with. We may have high or low self-esteem, and it changes day to day. It fluctuates. It's not black or white. It's a scale, but it's the knowing uh, of our own worth, basically, and appreciating ourselves. The confidence is when you're able to go into a room, or in any situation you might even be alone, but you feel the power to do whatever it is you need to do. But the self-esteem is more about appreciating your abilities, your work. It's more about appreciation, and in that way it's actually the gratitude for yourself. And so when we're speaking to ourselves, like we talked about on recent coaching call, with the positive language, with our nurturing voice, right, rather than the inner critic, we're building our self-esteem. And as Doug Lyle talks about in The Pleasure Trap, it is really important for us to have a high self-esteem so that we make the choices that are best for us. With a kind of a panel in the head that is more made up of critics more than the nurturing voice, right? Whether it's just one, the critic and the nurturing voice, or you have a panel inside your head of all these different voices. But if they're more critical, you're going to be, generally, you'll have a lower self-esteem. And if they're more nurturing and loving, you have a higher self-esteem. So what we tell ourselves matter. And when we have gratitude, it's reminding of us of all the beauty that is around us, which puts us in a positive state, but it also is helping to say that we are worth the beauty, that we deserve this, that we're someone that experiences this, so that it helps to build our self-esteem. Does that make sense? So there is one exercise I want you to do because we have a lot of exercises I want to squeeze in tomorrow. So there's one I want to do with you today because I'd rather not go into this on the call tomorrow. And that is defining your core values. So if you can take pen and pencil, you could do this on a device if you don't have pen and pencil. If you're in the car, you can just do it in your head for the time being, but maybe make note to come back to this. Just list out kind of that. It's good to be in a place of gratitude to do this, but list out 20 things you can't live without. 20 things that you're like the most grateful for that you would never go without have you had the choice. Like you just can't imagine life without them. You have 20 things you can list off. And when I say things, actually, I'm speaking more to the values rather than actual physical things. So, for instance, family, community, love, gratitude, um, nature, and if you're thinking of things or activities, try to tie back to it. What's the value associated with that? Your health, happiness, freedom, finances, security, right? There's a whole bunch. Joy, connection, strength, learning, self-realization, the big one, spirituality, your religion, food, real food, whole foods, animals, pets. How you doing? Are you almost done? So I'm going to move on. You've got to now take that list of 20 things. And I know it might be hard because I asked you about the 20 things you can't live without. You had to narrow it down to those 20 things. Well, now I'm going to say take those 20 down to 10. Eliminate the top 10, eliminate the bottom 10. So you only have 10 things you can't live without, or 10 things that are the most important to you. If you could only have these aspects, these features, characteristics, feelings, these elements in your life, what would they be? The top 10. Not an easy task, but now you've got to take off 3 more. So you've got 7. You can come back to this list and post it somewhere because they're all important. But for right now, narrow it down to 7 and now down to 5. Let's take it to just 5. So eliminate 2 more. No, not an easy task. Next, next month, we will do an activity of ordering these values. So it's great to put them out there now, and this will help you to order those. If you got it down to 5, awesome. Okay, so these 5 values, they say a lot about who you are as a person. And whatever those values are, think about them. How much do you embody those values? How much are you living in accordance, in alignment with those values? Really interesting. Really interesting to do this practice. Just like our belief, we get to choose our values. So you may have values aligned in a certain way, and they may, there's a lot of different ways this could go, but they may be just kind of share the experience I had is the values aligned in a way of what you thought, what you're mentally thinking matters to you, and yet I wasn't uh, acting in accordance with those values in the way I thought, which led me to do a couple things. One, figure out the values that I wanted to have in the order I wanted to have them. So this is where we'll go deeper next in the next month, and then embody those values that I want to be having. And some of them were already there that I just needed to work on embodying more. And some of them got switched. Some of the values were no longer as important as I thought they were because it was more like this maybe culture or maybe conditioning told me that they should be top values, but they weren't for my essence, for who I truly was and how I wanted to show up. And sometimes one of my top values uh, became so ingrained in me that it no longer needed to be something I valued because it almost like it just there's no way around it. Like there's no it's like a fish in the sea. It's the ocean. Like there's nothing else that exists. For me, actually, I'll just share now, that was freedom. Freedom was I realized was my top value, and it drove a lot of my decision making in many ways. And once I realized that that was a value that was pulling me towards things, and now I realize that it no longer needs to be a value because it's just what is. And not that I don't still value it, but the values that are most important to me are the ones that I put more attention on what I value, so I bring more of that to me. I don't need to put as much attention on freedom because it already exists for me. Does that make sense? So you may already have great connection with your family, and that's a top value. Just because you have that as part of your life, I wouldn't say that means you don't need to value it anymore. That's something. Relationships are very active that you'd always want to be putting attention on them to grow those those relationships. But other things, maybe they don't need as much of your attention anymore. For instance, the freedom. Okay. Um, yeah, if anything is like wonky, like in between, then you definitely want to put the attention on it because it's going to help keep that as a strong element in your life. Regardless if it's there. For me, as an example, joy. Joy is something that is pretty strong, but it's still wavering as far as how connected I am to that joyful, happy, just huge heart every single day, all day long. right? There's a difference. Versus faith is also incredibly important to me, but my faith is so strong that it's almost I could forget about it because it is non-wavering. It's always there. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And the reason I mention these values, like I said, is because of how important they are for building our self-esteem. This is a core piece of who you are. What you have, what you do, that's not you. That's just a way that you're showing up, expressing yourself. But these values, you also want to be embodying them, which is about you showing up and how you're expressing yourself. But they speak more to the core of your essence rather than temporary behaviors, actions, activities, even passions, right? The values are much more part of your core. And they speak directly to what you think is important. So if you have these values and you're showing up with these values and you're embodying them, then immediately it's building the self-esteem, especially if you can recognize this. You've identified the values, and if you can identify the times in your life, past, present, future, of when you're embodying these values, it builds your self-esteem. And that self-esteem is one way to strengthen your power. So our power comes from the solar plexus, which is not only a chakra in the yogic tradition, Ayurvedic tradition, right? We have commonly thought of as 7 chakras. The solar plexus is the third one from the bottom. You have the root, the sacral, solar plexus. But the solar plexus is also a nerve bundle that is behind the stomach. And it actually radiates out. All the nerves radiate from this center. Any plexus, the nerve plexuses, scientific term, but it means a bundle of nerves. And we have bundles of nerves all along the center of our body going upwards, and there's one right behind the stomach. And that's the core, the kind of center for our subconscious, the subconscious of the body. And that subconscious, starting there, is a center for your emotions. Everything from anxiety to how powerful you feel. Often, those are kind of on the opposite spectrum. You feel more powerful, you have less anxiety, vice versa, right? But that's where, when you feel anxiety, it's in your stomach, or it feels like in your stomach because it's right at that center. But when you feel powerful, it's also right there. And so when we are recognizing these values within ourselves, it's strengthening the solar plexus. It's strengthening our emotional center and our power center. So it's literally empowering us. It's empowering us with positive emotion. It's also empowering us to make better choices for ourselves. If we have a higher self-esteem, meaning we appreciate and respect ourselves more, then we're naturally going to make better choices. Right? So, and also when we're grateful, it helps to boost that self-esteem as well, because we notice all of the blessings in our life. Even when you feel grateful, you're even grateful that you feel grateful often. Like how wonderful it is that I notice all the beauty in my life. And that in and of itself is building your self-esteem. Ironically, gratitude was not one of the values I put on my list initially. And then I recognized how important it was to me that is something I valued. And so I added gratitude to my list of the top, within the top 5. Okay, so another thing with these values is, remember when at the beginning of the call, I asked you if you remembered your preferred decadence. That's not just one way that decadence shows up in your life, but the many ways that we can enjoy more decadence that is unique to us. What do we really want to enjoy in more richness? What do we want to bring into our lives, stimulate our nervous systems with, our senses, in a way that's nourishing? And it also might be soothing to your senses. Richness doesn't have to be stimulating. It might be rich in more of a soothing aspect, like bubble baths, right? That's a richness, but it's not stimulation. How can we connect the values and our decadence preferences? If you can think about those preferences that you had and tie them back to your values, see if they fit. Maybe you had a lot of decadence choices that were with the other values that you removed from your list, but you didn't have decadence picked out for these top values. If there's any way you can identify decadence that you would love that aligns with these values, you want to hold on to those during the holidays all year round. But I mentioned, multiple times throughout our journey together, how important the things we're doing are for this time of year, because it's this time of year where we're more connected to friends and family, but then it's easier to get pulled into their choices, their lifestyle, and also our culture just goes overboard with decadence that is not helping us, not serving us. And some of it is, but also we have to choose. We only have so much time that we have to choose how to spend our time in a way that is aligned with us, right? So, there you go. All right. I would love to hear from you guys, but we'll have to wait until the coaching call. So let me know if you have any questions, you can let me know in the chat. Any questions about this? The thing with the confidence, so confidence, as I said, is when we're recognizing the power that we have, our ability to choose and to perform in a certain way. It might be, like I said, individual, you might be alone, or you might be with a group, but you're confident to make the choices or to do the things that you need to do. So if we apply this to our food, when you're more confident in your food choices, it's going to be easier to make the choices that are nourishing to you. Also, not just your confidence with your food choices, as we think about it in the world of the whole food plant-based community, whole plant foods, but also confident in your values, your preferences. If you are not needing to be 100% plant-based and you highly value connection and enjoying the family tradition on the holiday, and then you go back to your, stronger whole food plant-based lifestyle every other day of the year, knowing that makes all the difference, because then you can fully enjoy whatever it is you're going to have on the holiday and make the choices that you're going to make the day after, instead of getting swept into other people's, choices and the leftovers and all those things, right? So the more power you have, more confidence you have aligned with your values and your truth, the easier it is to take care of yourself through the holidays. So you are the creator of your life. Every single one of you is the creator of your life. Or I like to think of it as a co-creator of our lives. None of us can be individual creators because otherwise we'd all be at separate worlds. We live in a world together, and so we are co-creating. And that co-creation happens with intention when you're aware of it and when you're tapping into it. Like just being aware, but not actually being present with that power and tapping into that energy that you have within you, then you're not so much in the driver's seat. You're co-creating, but you don't really recognize how much you're driving the car, right? You're kind of like a passenger more so than the driver. So in going into Thanksgiving and beyond, really think about a lot of these things we've talked about. We've talked about them on our calls together, but we only have so much time together, and I've mentioned a lot of different things. So if you could take some time to journal in the next couple of days and just bring more clarity in about your values, your truth, these top values, the way that decadence could show up around these values, and the other ones, if you don't have food or your health as one of the top 5, those things are going to matter during the holidays. So you also want to make sure that there's decadence around those things, even if they're not in those top 5. And I would say the same with family and friends. If you are connecting with anyone like that, if they're not in the top 5, considering how you can enjoy decadence in those relationships is also going to be important. And the more you bring in the confidence, self-esteem, and gratitude together, the more of a powerhouse you are. Right? Because you're not, especially with the gratitude, when you come in with the gratitude, your heart is open. Your heart is open. And so any power that you have is going to come across in a lighter way, in a more loving way. And when you can be in your power with the gratitude and the love, people are going to receive it better. Sometimes I imagine I've experienced myself and I hear stories of people making a choice that's best for them and they feel strong and happy with it, especially during the holidays. But then it's the way that they're expressing their choice, even if it's just energetically, they don't have to say a thing, but it could come across as arrogant for other family members, or just kind of a knowing, a better than, and other people can get defensive when they feel that energy. Even the way you say things can portray more of that energy, even if it's not what you intended. So the more you can connect to your power and the gratitude, which is more of the heart, and those flow together, and actually you'll have more power in your heart with gratitude and love if your power center is open. If you have stuck energy in your power and you're not recognizing your individual power, or you're acting out of feel more fear, then it blocks the love. It blocks the gratitude and it blocks the connection. And people feel that if you're making the choices that are best for you, but you're not feeling totally empowered and you're feeling more fear. Like if you feel more fear about what other people are going to think, then it kind of makes you more defensive and you don't have the love for those choices and for everyone around you, yourself included. And so it's easy to get defensive about your food, even though you know what's best and you're trying to act in a powerful way and nourish yourself with what you feel is right, but it shows up in a way that is not very powerful. It shows up in a way that you're acting out of fear, regardless of the choice you're making, but you may be acting out of fear of what other people are going to think rather than feeling the love and nourishing yourself. And so this goes both, all different ways. Like I said, regardless of whether you're having what you want to be having something nourishing for yourself or you're having something else, the way that you're making the choice is what matters as far as the energy that other people are going to feel and how they're going to come across that way. I know I've made choices partly to please other people, partly just because my ego wanted it, unhealthy choices in the holidays. And the energy that comes across is still off-putting to other people because I'm feeling shameful about it or resentful, and then I make other people feel bad. So your choices and how other people perceive and react to those choices are less about the choice you're making and more about your energy behind the choice and your energy in the engagement with the person or lack of engagement with the person. Right? So the combination of these things, gratitude, self-esteem, and confidence, they all matter. And of course, tying in your preferred decadence so that you know what you want to be having ahead of time. Knowing that ahead of time rather than having to make the choice in the moment is really, really powerful. And there's another factor here that you can use during the holidays. It's something I've been playing with for years. Haven't really talked about it though so much because it's just been a default for myself, like a game I play with myself, but it's delayed gratification. Does anyone use delayed gratification intentionally, even if they don't call it that? Very, very helpful. And actually, this is an approach to giving up things that don't serve us. It's also a way to strengthen your power, your self-esteem, and your gratitude in different ways. The delayed gratification is when you want something, but you don't act in the moment. You don't make a move for it and indulge in the item that you want immediately. You put it off. And you may just say, I'm not going to have that right now. I can have it later, but I'm not going to have it right now. Or you may set up a specific time to have it later. Like I'm gonna have that, in a couple hours. I'm gonna enjoy the company right here. I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to, maybe put down my plates and not go back for seconds or throw away my plates so I'm not tempted. And then I can go back for seconds later. It may come up the next day. I'm not going to have it today. I can have it tomorrow. And it may show up as, for instance, I do this with, this is one of the ways that I helped myself get off matcha and mochas and sugar in general, was to say, I'm not going to have it right now. I can have it tomorrow. Sometimes I needed to be very clear with myself that I was going to have it tomorrow. Like it wasn't a possibility. Like I put it into my schedule. But recognizing that it was just giving me a little bit more time in between was helpful. Delaying that gratification, delaying the frequency of what I was having was really helpful. Other times it would be, I'm not having it right now and I can have it tomorrow if I want to, but I'm going to choose then. And that has been a more positive approach for me, but it doesn't always help. It doesn't always work that way, and it can vary depending on what it is I'm talking about. But not only does it give me the option for it to be tomorrow, it also empowers me and like literally gives me more power to make the choice in the moment. I'm not having it now, and I can have it tomorrow, but who knows? I'll decide tomorrow. So it's giving me power in that way, but it's also preventing me from getting attached to having it tomorrow. On the days when I said I'm not having it today, but I'll have it tomorrow, and then it gave me something to look forward to. It made it easier to not have it today because I knew it was coming tomorrow, so I could look forward to that. But it also created that attachment to the outcome, to the, it got the dopamine going. So then if I didn't have it, I'd have a dopamine crash. So both of these are very helpful. And depending on what the item is, where you are in your journey with it, where, you are in your life, what other stressors you might be dealing with, you want to be able to use both of those approaches. But the delayed gratification is huge for the overall cravings that we have, but also for overeating, as I kind of indicated. If you want a second helping, you can go back later rather than right now. But for me, it really helped during the holidays in not necessarily going back for a whole meal, but for with the little treats or the appetizers that were around all day long, right? It's so easy to just grab a few more, even if it was just grapes. It could be just fruit. And I'm not trying to, put out an idea of anyone needing perfection. But for me, I would graze all day long. And that's typically what everyone's doing during the holidays is grazing all day long. But then it was like I was never hungry for my meal. And when you're having a delicious plant-based meal that's, super nourishing, nutrient dense, you want to be hungry to enjoy it fully. It helps, right? So not eating all day long is a good thing. And even if it's just the grapes or, veggies and hummus or mashed potatoes and gravy, it all adds up. And I feel much better when I don't have an excess of calories or an excess of just volume in my belly, right? That excess literally disconnects us from the present moment because we're focused on the sensations of the excess rather than what's in front of us. Both of them are in the moment, but it's like, where do you want you to put your energy? Where do you want your attention to be? Same with the cravings. When you're always thinking about the food, you're less present to the people that you're connecting with. And we're going to talk more about that in a future call, connection. And let me just see, I see some questions here. Oh, Maggie, awesome. I love this about the solar plexus. I think you're referring to the solar plexus chakra, is the one I was talking about mostly, but um, all of these chakras, they have neuro bundles, and it's really, to me, so fascinating in how these energy centers connect with the nervous system. So, Tom, are you asking for some examples of decadence? I think that's what you're asking for.
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. Because Sue is just wondering too about um, some examples of preferred decadence, right?
Example, mine, for example, is dark chocolate. So, I mean, that's when that preferred decadence comes to mind. I know that's not exactly part of the part of our proposal here, but I'm
Yeah.
just dealing with the nomenclature, actually.
So decadence literally means richness. right? And when we think of decadence, normally we're associating it with food. The food is decadent when it has um, more richness, either in calories or flavor. Usually both. The way that they pack in more flavor is by giving you more calories. And the calories themselves are more stimulating to the dopamine too. So when we think decadence, we're usually thinking about rich food. What I'm proposing, just like I am with deliciousness overall, is that we can enjoy the decadence in our life without it being food. So if there's an activity that you love, we, as an example, someone on our coaching call was doing um, knitting, like I think it was knitting. And I said, knitting is a great activity during the holidays, especially if you're making something for someone else, a loved one, a gift or something. But you could do that in your everyday way and enjoy it and feel happiness, contentment, peace, or you could do it with a little bit extra joy, emotion. You could do it in a comfier space in your home with the low lighting and candles lit. I don't know if that's, ideal for knitting. If you're a great knitter, I imagine that's possible. Um, you could do it with a cup of tea by you. You could do it with a friend or a daughter. You could do it with music playing in the background. Somehow you can make it a more heightened experience so there's more sensation. As I mentioned earlier, with it doesn't always have to be stimulating. The soothing bubble bath might actually be more peaceful. An example of how something could be stimulating or soothing, depending on what it is music. If you are in a space and you turn on, just you can kind of feel your energy. If you turn on more music that has a higher energy than where you currently are, it's going to be stimulating. If you turn on music that has a lower energy than your current energy, it'll be soothing. If, as an example of, some music, say like maybe R&B. R&B is kind of in the middle. Um, that could be uplifting to you in the morning time after just waking up, but in the evening, it would be too stimulating if you're wanting to calm down and go to bed, right? So depending on the situation, uh, you want to choose decadence that works for you. And you could have one with one value, for instance, family. You could have many ways that decadence shows up, many, many ways. And ideally, you have some that are, you can choose some ways to enjoy decadence with the family that is stimulating to you, and some decadence that's soothing. So, depending on the hour that you're with the family, at dinner time, if everyone is, even though it's the evening, but it's a holiday and people are staying up later, thinking about how you could actually have some stimulating activity with the family or conversation with the family that would be more decadent than your normal. And it would keep you from going for the food because we all know myself, like I'm, a huge foodie. And in the evening, when everyone else is eating, I want some of that decadence too. If I can think about a game that we can play, or for me, I love, it's not easy to pull anyone into something like this, but if I can get them in some sort of engaging activity for our growth, I would love that. It would be like so much fun for me. But other times when, a couple hours later, it's like 10 o'clock at night now, I want to be calming down. Everyone wants to watch a movie and have popcorn or, um, whatever it might be. Somehow they're soothing with something, even alcohol. They're soothing with something that's going to help them get to sleep. I want to think about how I can enjoy decadence in a way that's soothing to me. right? Before I mentioned, I wanted to bring this up. Last call, I mentioned how if everyone's having popcorn or ice cream or something over a movie, I might have a cup of tea. That's true. And that wouldn't be a great example of decadence for the holidays. And that wouldn't be what I would do most likely if everyone's, Christmas or Thanksgiving, everyone's having decadence. I would be more likely to make my own like hot chocolate or something that was richer than what I would normally do. And sometimes I might not, I may only be partially interested in that decadence. Like part of me might be like, I don't really need it. But then another side of me is like, but you do want the rich experience with the family, right? Because it does take you somewhere else. That stimulation does take your emotion somewhere else, especially like chocolate, right? It's one of those foods that literally opens up your heart. And normally, like, because if my everyday is just tea, I don't need chocolate in the evening. I'm like, I'm ready. I could go to bed. I don't need anything else to have right now. But if it means me staying up an extra 2 hours to enjoy the time with the family, and that being one of my values, then it's like, okay, I'm going to make that choice, right? So you really just, it makes such a difference to think about the value and the decadence that you can bring into your life ahead of time. Also, thinking again about the delayed gratification, this might be a great time to think about those, um, the decadence that you could have, you know, thinking about the values that aren't directly connected with the family, and then also the ones that are directed with the family. If you can delay them to the ideal time, that would be great. For instance, I love making Christmas cookies. My grandma's Christmas cookies, fruit and spice cookies. I have a vegan, whole food recipe for them. I would eat those all season long, like every day, all season long. So if I think about the delayed gratification, when would it be the best time to have those? If I could make them with my mom, that would be ideal. So it's like I can hold off making them, like I don't need to make them when I'm here in Mexico, and then I'll just make them when I am with my family, and then I can really enjoy them then, and it means I'm not overindulging in them all season long. So thinking about how you can have that, bring in the delayed gratification with the decadence that you want to have so that you can fully enjoy it without overdoing it. Because that's where the decadence serves us, is when it is stimulating or extra soothing in a way that brings a lot of pleasure, sensation, emotion, happy emotion, and it feels so good. But then we can go back to our baseline in a really smooth, positive way without getting attached to those feelings and carrying it through. For instance, when I would have mochas, my mochas became extra decadent during the holidays with peppermint added to it. Peppermint, not just a peppermint leaf, but that has extra sugar in it, right? So it was extra stimulation and it brought even more of the holiday spirit. But then that carried into January to February and occasionally most of the year. So that's not going to offer me the same decadence all year round as it did during the holidays. And it actually made it more of a challenge not to gain weight when I was having liquid beverages like that with the added sugar. So does that make sense, all of this? Tapping into your values, your self-esteem, building up your self-esteem and your confidence with gratitude, and employing the delayed gratification. All of those pieces, those are the top 5 pieces that we talked about today. You can bring those all together, wrap them up in one big package bundle, and keep them in your back pocket all throughout the season. Not only is it going to allow you more joy, more love and connection, but also more of the decadence in a way that actually nourishes you. And it's going to be much easier to find the deep nourishment throughout the season, the nourishment that is like literally packing your cells with nutrients. It's packing your mindset with positivity. It's packing your, energy centers with really great uplifting energy. All of that throughout the season and taking it to the next level in January when you're wanting to, level up your game even further, possibly, if you're like me. Um, it just makes it that much easier because you're not getting kind of overwhelmed with all the decadence. And along with that extra decadence often comes, not that it needs to, but often comes with more, um, more of the critic, the the critics that are lowering your self-esteem, taking from your power center, and then it's like you have to find that again with the holiday after the holidays and kind of figure out the emotions and the mental work to actually make the change physically in January. If you have strong emotions, energy, uh, thoughts all through the holiday season that actually could get stronger through the season, then January is just going to be even more exciting and more of an ease and joyful experience. Okay. So tomorrow we're going to be back for our coaching call with a lot more activity and engagement. Looking forward to it. 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 Eastern. If you can join us, fantastic. If not, I will have the replay for you and I will send out this replay as well. Yeah, I look forward to it. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.